Being that it is 7 p.m., we'll go ahead and call tonight's Tuesday, December 4th, 2018 meeting of the Noblesville Common Council to order. Welcome. If you would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hampton, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Ayer?
Present.
Mr. Boyce?
Present.
Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. O'Connor?
Present.
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Present.
Ms. Wiles?
Present.
Mr. Jensen?
President.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Moving right along to the approval of the minutes from the November 27th, 2018 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved in second. All those in favor? Abstentions? Six.
I have to abstain.
Okay,
Sorry.
6-3. So 6 in approval, 3 abstention. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to tonight's approval of the agenda. Mr. Ayer.
Mr. President, I move to amend the agenda and postpone items number 4611-18, 4711-18 until the December 18th, 2018 meeting. Also to postpone miscellaneous number 3 to the December 18th, 2018 meeting.
No, transfer.
I'm sorry, transfer number 3.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the agenda. All those in favor of the amendment? 9-0. All those in favor of the agenda as amended? 9-0. Thank you very much. Petitions or comments by citizens who are present. I have no sheets in front of me, but if you would wish to speak tonight, we would welcome that. Just head out the door there to the north. There are sheets available, and you can hand them to the clerk at that time. Moving on to the mayor's report to council. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, members of council. One thing, the firefighters are still accepting donations for their Christmas and toy drive. They're going to do that through the 10th. So would encourage everyone to be supportive of that. We had an open house here at City Hall for employees and their families with Santa and cookies and a lot of fun. Everybody had Robert Harrington actually organized that, and a lot of great pictures of both young and old with Santa. Tomorrow is the Chamber Holiday Luncheon. We have a ribbon cutting at the Hamilton Town Center, ribbon cutting at a First Family Chiropractic. A new event, which we talked about last time, but excited about it, on the 7th, which is Friday, will be lights over Seminary Park. So looking forward to that. And of course, also on the 7th is Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. And on the 8th, which is Saturday, I think it's at 10 a.m., there'll be a Pearl Harbor Proclamations Remembrance here at City Hall. The 14th, Perfecto, and it seems like somewhat only yesterday, Spectrum and Perfecto are celebrating their 50th anniversary here in Noblesville. And then Judge Nation is retiring, and there's a celebration of his service on the 20th. Tonight with us is Brenda Myers. Brenda is the president of the Hamilton County Tourism Bureau, here to update us on the White River Visiting Project that several counties are doing to improve the White River. And turn it over to Brenda.
30 minutes, is that right? I was definitely told 5. He knows you've seen me in action. Is that what you said? Okay.
That's what he said.
Tomorrow night I'll be at County Council, so I get 15 there, I think. So
They don't do anything.
thank you all very much for letting me come and update you on the plan. A number of your staff members are attending meetings, but just the opportunity to be face-to-face with you and really talk to you about this plan, because I'm really excited about it. It's big. I'll admit that it's even bigger than I thought it was going to be when I got involved in it, but it's exciting and it's been a lot of discovery. You are investors in this plan, so thank you very much for your support. It means a lot. We are about halfway through. We started in July. Many of you might have been at that meeting at City Hall in July. We've spent a lot of time in neighborhoods and with families, really reassuring them that this is not a plan like they may have seen in the past, a trails plan that's been presented, that this is their plan. And I want to stress that over and over again. This is not my plan. We're the conveners of the conversation. It's not even your plan, it's the community's plan. And I think that's really important. And so what we're going to laser focus on are our existing assets. And I've got 10 here, but I actually think there are 12. I've left 2 of Fisher's off. Good thing I didn't leave 2 of yours off. And if I did, let me know. But we just completed phase 1. And if you have time, it's worth the read over the holidays when you're looking for something to do. There's a 200-page document on the mywhiteriverplan.com. Even though I told you it wasn't My White River, that's the name of them. It's like your My White River Plan. It's a 200-page document that's sort of a current assessments report. It has all of your plans referenced in there, your existing downtown plan, any other overlay districts or any other comprehensive plans that you have in your communities. It also talks about sort of the existing condition of the aquatic life, the ecology, the environment. It's really interesting. It's an interesting read, and talks about the history of the river. And of course, Noblesville has just such a huge past history with the river. So that ended somewhat in October. We then went into public sessions for the Envision Plan, which is what do we leave alone? What needs a little love? Where could we focus our attention in the next 30 years? What's important? We did 2 in your area. We did 1 in Carmel because we hadn't been in Noblesville before, but with due deference to the farmers who were still harvesting late in the season, we had a November session up in Strawtown and had really good attendance. We've been to Riverwood. We've been to the Southwest Quad. We'll go anywhere. So if you have any constituents that want us to come out to small group meetings and talk about this, we would love it. We've been trying to be out and about as much as we can. So the action phase 3 will kick off in late January, in addition to input on the phase 2. So what happens is the phase is developed, the draft is put out there, it's an evolving document, we start immediately into phase 2. And this is the dreaming phase. What is it that we want to do? And so what we're really thinking is focusing on these 12 assets that exist on the river. We're very lucky in Hamilton County because we have these sort of 12 jewels on this necklace that are already there, already have public access. What can we do to make them better is really going to be our focus. We will not be practicing eminent domain. We don't have the right to do it if we wanted to do it, but we do not want to do it. And we're not going to propose any trails in areas that people have said is concerning to them. I just want to let you know you will not see any document like that from us. And if anybody feels, we're more than welcome to send people my way. So the unique opportunity is the fact that it's a 2-county study. It's the largest in the country right now, 58 miles. That is really unique and wonderful. And it's a 30-year vision. And obviously downtown Noblesville has an amazing opportunity. And I spoke with the county commissioners on Friday, and we talked a little bit about, there's going to have to be a conversation about downtown, or ongoing. I know you have many conversations between the county and the city. The challenges that I see and my biggest worry is that we have three municipalities, actually 4, because Westfield owns lands on the river, 4 municipalities that have to agree to a governance structure, plus the county. Just pause for a moment to reflect on that, and plus Indianapolis. So that's why I'm here today, is to just really inform you and catch you up and let you know that I'm available to speak to anybody at any time. Also, I can give you the list of the various committees that if you want to go to those meetings and attend any of those, you are welcome to. The documents are all public documents. And then obviously, how we're going to fund this stuff. Once we dream up all these really cool things, how we're going to fund it. I did want to state that I've had conversations with the staff about the fact that we just got last week the vision plan team. I know I'm going over 5 minutes, aren't I? Okay. But I'm riveting, right, Mike? So it's okay. So the vision plan team has proposed an interesting study for your area that is not what was on my list or Steve's list, and I just want to throw it out here for it's an idea. So I'm throw it out for conversation, and you don't have to talk about it tonight, but if you'd like me to come to an executive session or talk about, a work session or something, I'd be happy to. They want to really look at south part of the city, all the way down through Conner Prairie property as a node. They feel like that part of the river is a jewel and needs to be looked at in a 30-year vision, right? There's a landfill on there now. There's land for sale now. There's agricultural land. There's some quarries that will be coming offline. And what is it that we should do environmentally, sort of access-wise, to look at that land and see what we should do with it? It's just I'm like, ooh, that's kind of big. But we know Conner Prairie is completing its master plan for its property, has some very exciting ideas. I sit on that planning committee. And so the idea that Conner Prairie could connect to Noblesville in some way, don't know how, it's just an interesting idea. So I thought I'd throw that out. I've said to them, we have a lot of talking to do. And then they've also proposed Strawtown Katawee via study area, which also sort of impacts you as well. Obviously, that's a gem. And although 96% is in conservation easement, it really can't be touched. And then they've also proposed 96th Street down through Castleton into the new Oliver Woods, which is down by Keystone of the Crossing. So those are three interesting nodes in our area. We can get them to move back up north and get them to move back downtown if that's the area that you think that you'd like to focus on. I did say that if they said they would definitely talk with us about downtown and help us think through, but you have such great planning is what they said. It's just really going to be what sprinkles could we do to make it, the Riverwalk even better and that kind of thing. So this is your plan. We will be bringing the results in the next few months to you. I don't know how we want to do that. If you could just let me know how you'd like to do that so that you have full input on that, that would be great. I just don't want there to be any surprises. Any questions?
Questions of Brenda?
Like you said, riveting.
Yeah, huh?
Like you said, you're riveting.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Roy. But it's a really interesting process. If you read that document, if you have a chance, it's a fast read, and I think all of you love this community, and you'll love the read, and just, you can skip over the Indianapolis parts. No, I'm just kidding. And just let me know if you have any questions, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your support again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
very
hard
much.
work. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Brenda. I think I'd learn after a while. Are there any questions of me?
Any questions of the mayor? See none.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir. Appreciate it. We'll move on to council committee reports. Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met November 29th. We spent a fair amount of time in a robust conversation reviewing meet and confer recommendations. Probably the one that we spent a fair amount of time on was acting in capacity pay, which I will try to articulate briefly, but if you are a captain and you happen to be acting in the lieutenant's spot for the day because that person is out, you'd actually get another $1 hourly pay because you're actually taking the responsibility of that person. The dollar amount from a cost standpoint is fairly nominal. It's about $10,000 a year that the chief estimates would be involved. And I bring this up because you'll see the salary ordinance come back again for an amendment that will incorporate that language. So I'm not sure exactly when we're going to see it, but I suspect in fairly short order. There was some discussion about differences in pay between ranks. We've looked at this in some depth, trying to decide how do you really address it. Probably will be more of a 19 discussion from a budget perspective. Subsidy for Parks Golf, I believe that's one of the items on the agenda here this evening, so I will allow Mr. Spalding to speak at greater length on that issue. The transfer resolutions are also on the agenda, as well as the promotional fund contingency. So all these things come to you tonight with a favorable recommendation from the committee. Looked at a few things that are still on the agenda, OpenGov, Budget Builder, and I believe, and the claims come to you with a favorable recommendation as well, and I think that was pretty much a wrap for the meeting. Oh, one thing I will mention is the Black Friday sales for the parks. They had estimated it'd be about $15,000, and the revenues actually came in at $26,000. So we hope that's not cannibalizing 19 revenue and Black Friday with the discounts, but that's a good number. So making an effort to try to drive some revenues and for the Christmas season.
Any questions of Mr. O'Connor? Seeing none, additional committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there a motion to approve the claims?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor? 9-0. Thank you very much. Moving along with tonight's agenda and new ordinance for discussion. Ordinance 49-12-18, council to consider ordinance 49-12-18, an ordinance amending ordinance 23-06-14 for the crossing plan development regarding text amendments allowing LED building lighting for the St. Vincent Neighborhood Hospital at 9460 East 146th Street.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
So moved and seconded. Good evening, Ms. Yelton.
Good evening. Again, this ordinance is basically an amendment to the PD ordinance for the crossing. It is specific to the St. Vincent Neighborhood Hospital. Again, the property is located on the north side of 146th Street, just east of State Road 37. When they were back before the council in 2017, and that amendment included additional signage on their building. At that time, we did not realize that there was LED lighting around the building. It was not called out very prominently, I'm going to say, on their plans. When they did come back for their next amendment, which is at their neighborhood hospital at the promenade, it was part of the Plan Commission's motion that they come back with these amendments for both hospitals to basically either get approval or denial of that request. And that is basically what they're doing this evening. Again, they're requesting this amendment does permit lighting. It's kind of difficult to see. It is on the north and south elevations. On the south elevation, it basically is just goes along here on this portion of the building. And on the north elevation, it is basically the same thing. It goes just basically at the top on that particular portion of the building. Again, the Plan Commission did hear it at a public hearing. There were no interested citizens that attended that meeting in regards to this particular application. The Plan Commission did send a favorable recommendation for adoption by a 7 yes, 0 no vote. The applicant has requested that a suspension of the rules and adoption of this ordinance this evening. And with that, I will ask if you have any questions of planning staff. If not, Brad Schrage is present in the audience.
Questions of Ms. Yelton? Mr. Boyce?
So this is how the promenade one is currently lit.
Okay, this one here is specific to the crossing. Yes, yes.
Right.
Currently, the existing LED lighting that you see is exactly what this plan shows.
Okay,
It was just never approved
gotcha.
For either building.
for
I
either
thought I just
building.
wanted to make sure I got that right. Thank you.
Mr. Hampton?
Mr. President, just, is it primarily lighting the signs, or is it?
No, it
Okay.
is actually lighting that just, it doesn't light any signs, it is just lighting on the building. The council, probably 3 years ago, I'm thinking, maybe 4 years ago, approved LED lighting around the building at Jaggers that is directly across the street from this particular location.
Thank you, that's all, I just couldn't picture.
Additional questions, Mr. Taylor?
Did we already give them a variance on their signs?
You guys did grant waivers for additional signage on the building. And most of that signage had to do with the word emergency, their ambulance entrance, was basically what most of the signage was.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Question to Mr. O'Connor?
Just for clarification, the lighting is already installed, is that?
That
right?
is correct.
Okay,
There is no additional LED lighting being placed on this building.
so this should have been caught on the front end, am I,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page here.
Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, is there questions of the petitioner this evening? Seeing none, there is a request on the table to waive the rules and pass on first reading. Is there a motion to do so?
President,
Mr. Ayer?
I move to waive the rules on ordinance 4912-18 and pass on first reading.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to waive the rules. All those in favor of waiving the rules, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? All right.
You can't
Eight
waive
to-
the- you can't.
Then we can't waive the rules. Right. Okay. We'll see them back in 2 weeks on that issue. We'll move right.
Everybody, may I explain my vote?
Absolutely, Mr. Boyd.
I apologize for holding you guys up 2 weeks, but I think everybody should go out and take a look at it just to see what they think. Because there are a lot of lights there. I'm not saying I'm against it, but there are a lot of lights and it looks a lot different than anything else there. So I think I have looked at it and I know it. And so I think it'd be worth the 2 weeks just for everybody to take a look at it so we can have a good conversation on it in 2 weeks.
Is that on both of them, Mr. Boyce? Lights are up on both of them?
Yeah.
The lights are just on the one at Promenade right now,
Not on
right?
both of them.
Oh, they are on
They
both.
are on both of them. I
Lights
don't
are-
know if the lights at the promenade are lit because that hospital has not been staffed.
It has been lit.
It's lit.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
lit.
So they change colors.
The lights are on, but no one's home.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's fair.
One question, when the lights are up, is it, do we have a photometric that's been recorded or part of the plans? It doesn't violate the ordinance? the light
No,
ordinance? Okay.
no. LED lighting typically doesn't violate the ordinance.
So even though there's a lot of lights, it still meets the ordinance?
The reason I check our friends at Willow Lakes probably drive by it every day, I assume on 32, so, yeah, thank you, thank you. Okay, we'll move right along. Thank you very much, Ms. Yelton. We'll move right along to new ordinance 50-12-18. Council to consider ordinance 50-12-18, an ordinance amending ordinance 6-1-6 for the Promenade Plan Development regarding text amendments allowing LED building lights for the St. Vincent Neighborhood Hospital at 6139 Promenade Shops Boulevard.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Good evening again, Ms. Yelton.
Good evening. Again, this is, located on the north side of State Road 32. It is east of Little Chicago Road. It is part of the Promenade Plan Development. Again, it is the same request for the St. Vincent Neighborhood Hospital to allow LED lighting, or to correct, to ask for an amendment, a waiver of the rule, of the waiver to allow the LED lighting around the building. Again, the lighting currently exists. They're not adding any additional LED lighting on that building. Again, there was a public hearing held at the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission did send a favorable recommendation for adoption by a 7 yes, 0 no vote. Again, the applicant did request again that the suspension of rules occur this evening in the adoption of this ordinance on first reading.
Any questions of Ms. Yelton or the petitioner? Seeing none, there is a request on the table to waive the rules and pass this on first reading. Do I have a motion to approve the request? Seeing none, we'll see you back in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Take the bait. All right.
I'm not slow.
You guys are paying attention tonight. This is good. All right. Move right along here to new ordinance 51-12-18. Council to consider ordinance 51-12-18, an ordinance concerning an additional appropriation in the promotion fund.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Good evening, Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, City Controller, and ordinance 51-12-18 is actually one of two related ordinances that you have before you that, along with 52-12-8, that I would characterize, we'll get to that one in a second, but I would put it in context, I'd characterize them as a matched pair, somewhat like a pair of shoes, that you could use one shoe, but it's not that helpful. But if you have both, they work together. And basically what 51-12-18 is doing, as we've discussed in the Finance Committee, there is certain year-end cleanup with regard to, budgets aligning with expenses and so on and so forth. But as you do that, you have to operate when you're doing appropriation transfers within a fund. You have to operate within that fund. And the promotional fund, if you'll recall, was created earlier this year and is a relatively small fund. And at the time it was created, I didn't factor in any contingency into this fund. So for the purposes of year-end cleanup in the promotional fund, what this ordinance is doing is appropriating an additional $10,000 into this fund so that you'll have some money to, or I'll have some money to be able to address any year-end budget issues. And the reason for that, I think, is very important, as, again, been discussed in Finance Committee and even here at the council, is the emphasis this year in terms of financial management and financial reporting is on getting expenditures posted to the right place and letting proper posting of expenditures drive accounting and then making budget adjustments to address that, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm out of budget here, so I'll find a place to charge the expenditure. We want to start tracking expenditures where they should be. And so this is part of that year-end cleanup, and this specific ordinance is an appropriation into the promotional fund, and the other pair of the shoes is a de-appropriation because we'll be moving money from the general fund into the promotional fund for this purpose. So with that, if you have any questions.
Questions of Mr. Spalding? Very much. We'll move right along to 52-12-18. Council to consider ordinance 52-12-18, an ordinance concerning an appropriation reduction in the general fund.
Motion to introduce.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Spalding.
And again, thank you all. As I said, this is the other half of this. And I suppose one other relevant thing to understand about the relationship between these two funds is the promotional fund was initially created with proceeds from the general fund. And so that, again, along being consistent with what was initially done, this is just moving $10,000 more from the general fund into the promotional fund, which is consistent with what was done earlier in the year. So.
Questions of Mr. Spalding? Seeing none, thank you very much. Moving on to miscellaneous number 1, council to consider 2019 wastewater utility budget. Mr. Thompson, good evening.
Had to make some notes here because I'll get straying one way or the other. In front of you is the 2019 budget for the utility. You'll notice that our format is totally different from what you've seen in the past. It was a challenge for us this year, changing our account system to a new chart of account structure. It is a good change. It's helping us find the things, the little things that we would miss in the budget that we had previously, and this is kind of detailing in more of our expenses and helps us with the budget. It was just the conversion from our old numbers to the new, which really made this difficult. We did have our accountants in on ball mid-year to do a check and make sure we were going the right direction. This budget reflects some of those changes. We made adjustments based on talking to them, and basically we finally got this done here about a week ago after making some changes. So I apologize for this coming late in the year, but I usually try to do it sometime in early November. Our budget, the first page, it's broke down by departments. And you can see the administration side of the utility. We show an 8.7% increase on the billing office section, 4.0 increase. Stormwater is a 10.8. That does include 2 new employees to be added to our stormwater crew. The collection system is up 13.3. The bulk of that is because after talking to our accountants, we had moved, when we did this restructuring, we had moved all of our electrical use into administration. And before, it was plant collection. Well, they kind of informed us we really need to move that back. So this budget does reflect that, but that's the main reason for the increase on collection, is you see that jump back into the collection for our lift stations, and then the plant has separate power. So that way, when we're doing our reporting and dialing in our budgets, we'll know what the power consumption was in the lift stations versus what the treatment plant usage was. Keep it separate. So, plant and lift stations only had about a 2.7 increase. Move on to the next page. It's our 100 series. This reflects the 2 additional stormwater employees and the overall 3% wage increase. It shows an overall 5.2 for the 100 series of an increase. The next page, if you move to the 200 series, this is more of our materials and parts and fuels and supplies. We had an increase for the asphalt and concrete restoration of inlet work by the stormwater crews. We're bumping that up a little at a time versus just taking a big jump in one year. We did have quite a few more stormwater repairs and work orders to deal with. Matter of fact, they've grown significantly over the last several years. That's a reason for the hiring of the 2 employees. Our existing crew, which is a 3-man crew, they do our combined sewer system, which is the old part of Noblesville. They do our new sanitary sewers, which is out in the subdivisions. And then they also do the stormwater work. We were just overloading them too much. So what we're doing is the 2 new hirees will work on strictly stormwater. The other 3-man crew will still do the combination sewers and sanitary. But that 3rd person on that crew will float back and forth between the 2 crews. If the stormwater crew needs a 3rd guy, they can take that guy and get something done that requires 3 people. But for the most part, the 200 series is just our materials and supplies. We did have an increase for sewer pipe and structure work of about $5,000. And then personal protective equipment, PPE, that has gone up over the years. Boots have gone up in price, and we've had the same cost for years that we allotted per employee. So we raised that up to at least allow them to get the electric hazard boots, steel toe, obviously insulated. Our boots and what the guys do, we're always subject to electrical hazards, so we have to go that one little step farther and make sure they are rated for electrical safety. If you go to the 300 series, this is more of our contracts and softwares and training and utilities. There's an $80,000 increase under the treatment plant. That is for aluminum sulfate, and part of our phosphorus removal that we have been, the project we've been completing here the last year or so, and it should be done here within the next month or 2. The aluminum sulfate is a chemical we have to put into our system, which helps basically the solids and the phosphorus will bind together, settle out. We remove that and send that to our sludge processing. So that's just a chemical we have to have as a backup, because the plant's set up for biological phosphorus removal. But should we get bad weather, higher flows, anything that could disrupt the plant, this allows us to have a backup to chemically still remove the phosphorus and meet our permit limits. but that's about an $80,000 a year increase. And as I mentioned before, $180,000 was moved into the collection system, which is why it showed such an increase in that for the lift station power. Also in 300, there's a line account which is 379. That account is what I'll call the 100 series for people within City Hall that we pay half wages. This was kind of new, figuring all this out, but we're pretty sure we're right in there. But this pretty much reflects the 3% wage increase and then an additional person in Jeff's office that was going to be picked up sometime this year. And again, this is just the half wages. We only do 50%. I believe yours is 30% on part of it, but when you go to the 400 series, that's our capital improvements. And we've had a lot more equipment replacement the last few years than we normally do. I think a lot of it's just because the plant is starting to get some age to it. We've had to replace some trucks, and we have a fairly large truck that we're looking to replace for 19, and that's in the plant section for $171,000. And that is a utility truck with a boom, all the welding equipment, air compressors will be equipped on this truck, and that truck will allow us to pull some of the larger pumps at our lift stations that we have issues with now with our current truck, and then the new equipment at the plant. As part of the phosphorus project, we've had to go with a larger truck to be able to have the capacity to reach a boom out and pull certain pieces of equipment out. Because the farther it is away, the heavier boom you have to have. But that's $171,000 in the plant. We're replacing the older computers. We did, I don't know, I think around 14 of them this year. We'll probably be doing 14, 15 for 19 as well. We'll be replacing a truck, possibly 3 more trucks than what's shown here, but it was kind of one of them last end of the year things. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen, and I didn't know this until after the budget was completed. It shouldn't affect our capital improvements program at all, but we'll make adjustments for that the following year. Also, under the collection system column, there's a $58,000 cost that we've been paying for the last 5 years. That's the purchase. We had like a purchase lease for our combination jet and vacuum truck. This is the last payment of that, so it'll be good to get that one out of the way. But overall, our capital improvements is down 10%. But as I said, we spent a little bit more the previous year, and our spending for this coming year on capital improvements is a little higher, just because we're trying to get the brick sewers line that are in town. We have storm sewers around town, mainly the older subdivisions where they were made out of the corrugated metal pipe. They're rotting away, so we've got to get those lined. That's the reason for these increases, but we're really equipped to handle these type of increases for these capital improvement projects. So it really shouldn't hurt us. As long as we do this within a year or two, maybe an additional year, and then we have to kind of let off a little bit and we'll hit it hard again. So it just balances out. In 2019, you can see where we spent $633,000. Whoop, that's a typo, 2018. We've spent $633,000. That was relining the brick sewer downtown, the old brick sewer. But what we really did was we average about 300,000 a year to do these sewer rehab projects within the utility. So what we did is we held off to the end of the year, had that 300,000 to 300,000 for 2018, combined 17 and 18, which made it a $600,000 project. So it'll give us a little bit more bang for the buck. So that's how we've kind of set up some of these rehab projects, is we'll do it at the end of the year. So we have that year and the year following to combine those and do a larger project. But by the year, it still ends up being the same amount, so. Moving on to our 900 funds. Not a whole lot of change here. I pretty much just follow the increases or decreases in the amortization schedule. Looks like it's pretty much the Phase 4 and phosphorus project were the biggest increase in this, but everything else is pretty steady. Overall, we do have 38 employees at the treatment plant. And we have of those 38, we have 3 at engineering, which are our stormwater guys, and they handle the permitting and the inspections on the stormwater side. The 2 guys that we're going to hire would give us a total of 40 people at the utility. And like I said, they'll be based out of the utility because they strictly would be for O&M of the stormwater system. And then just a little note, 2018, our customer count was 21,111 customers. And the previous year, we had 20,586. So we grew in 2018, 525 customers for the year. And most of our budget, just our growth, does kind of coincide and work with our increases that we do each year. So we stay within our revenue that comes in. So, any questions?
Questions of Ray? Mr. O'Connor?
Ray, you do a great job in the utilities management. It's one of those things that nobody thinks about unless it's not working properly. So I guess in that vein, are there any other large projects that you see coming down the road besides our requirement to do the sewer separation? But we had the phosphorus program. Is there anything else mandated that you see coming in the next 2-3 years?
We actually got an email today from the state where they are looking at nitrogen. And
not oxygen.
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
And as a result of that, our next permit renewal, which I believe is in 2021, we have to start monitoring for our nitrogen. Well, this is exactly what happened when we went into the phosphorus removal. On one of our permit renewals, they told us we had to start monitoring, and the next 5-year permit we went to renew, we're doing a phosphorus project to remove it. So I'm not saying this is going to happen on nitrogen, but we just got the notification today that they're letting municipalities know as they renew their permits, we have to start monitoring for nitrogen. So, that's out a little bit. Like I said, that'll be 2021 where we have to start monitoring. As far as the construction around the treatment plant and our projects, Phase 5, as you mentioned, we are going into a preliminary design. We have a meeting next week to kind of talk about that and get that started here this late winter or spring. Our sludge works, As a result of the phosphorus project, we do produce more sludge than what we used to. We're still trying to see how the plant is reacting to the phosphorus removal because we're not even really completed yet. So we're seeing days where we're having good biological removal, and then we're seeing days where we'd have to use the aluminum for the removal. But we don't have to meet that limit yet. We're still kind of working towards that and getting the plant dialed into it. But once we know the characteristics of the plant and see how much sludge we're removing, then we'll know how to deal with the next project. Because we will have more sludge to deal with, but it's a little early to say what we're going to do at this time.
The phosphorus removal project, what was that total cost?
That was around, I think it was around 6.5, 7.
Million. That was mandated by the state with no help from the state.
Correct.
Correct. So just for those of you here in the audience, just to let you know that these are the things that come down from the state. So it's a little concerning about now monitoring another level and that nitrogen and that having the potential of another.
Yeah, phase 4 of the long-term control plan and the phosphorus project combined were about 12 million. So,
And I will say to your point as well, is, we are fortunate with Ray's leadership, but because as someone who gets to travel the state and meet with every community who's facing this, and has crippled many communities because of that price tag. So thank you for your diligence and guiding us through that. Yeah, not easy. Any other questions or Mr. Hampton?
Mr. President, just, you mentioned some of the older neighborhoods and some of the tile. Are you able to keep pace with that budgetary wise, or is there trouble spots that you might need us to help you focus and repair?
right now, what we're dealing with is just the difficulty of getting the manpower out there to work on these things. Once we get the manpower out there, we'll probably start seeing slight increases in our materials and supplies. But we are going to look at it too as overall projects, like we did the brick sewer downtown, where we'll go to someone else and take bids to do like so many thousands of feet of storm sewer in a project. But if we do something like that, that's where we'll try to do something like every other year. That's where we combine 2 years to make a larger project and get a little bit more bang for the buck doing that. But yeah, as we look at some of these neighborhoods, it's mainly the subdivisions with the corrugated metal pipe. They're just rotting out. We just had a repair on Little Chicago Road near the South Harbor entrance, where we had to have a pipe relined, and we worked with engineering on that project. But yeah, it's mostly the older subdivisions, older Wellington, older South Harbor, Forest Hill. We've not really gotten a whole lot of what I'll say, we have a point system. And when we televise, that gives us a scale of the severity of the pipe. And believe it or not, Forest Hill hasn't really been that bad. It's an older subdivision, but we've not really had that many issues with that.
Well, they must be all calling me.
Additional comments or questions? Thank you. This item actually tonight requires no action from the council, but we appreciate the update. So,
alrighty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work, Ray.
Great job.
Moving right along to miscellaneous number 2, council to consider resolution RC 22-8-18, a resolution concerning land acquisition. Mr. Hellman, good evening.
Good evening, members of the council. Before I have you is a resolution concerning acquisition of real estate. These are for two projects which are currently under different phases of development. The projects are Oleo Road from 141st Street to 146th Street, and sanitary sewer extension from Summer Road and 146th Street to the west, and then a bore under 146th Street, which will get sewer to the northeast and southeast corner of Promise Road and 146th Street. I included exhibits in there that kind of showed where the parcels were and the projects. Do you guys have any questions?
Fair.
Mr. Hellman, on your cover sheet, just for my clarification, you mentioned 146th and Summary Road. It's Summer Road?
Summer Road, that is a typo. I apologize for that.
Okay.
And there's actually that same typo in the resolution. So if we can just make sure that it reflects Summer Road versus Summary Road.
And there actually is not a road there currently, but we do have the right-of-way for the road.
Correct. There's dedicated right, but the road, there's no physical pavement down.
Also, as part of your exhibit, you referenced that as Oleo Road. So we might want to correct that also to state Summer.
Okay. I apologize, and I'll pay more attention to
It's
that.
not a big issue, I just want for the record to make sure we're all on the same page, so.
Additional questions? Need to amend this, Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk, do we need to amend this before we? Okay. Somebody want to summarize that?
So, Mr. President.
Ms. Wiles?
I would make a motion that we amend Resolution RC 22-18 to reflect that it's 146th Street and Summer Road, sanitary sewer extension, -EN-96.
Second.
And it's been second. It's been second on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. 9-0. Now, do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved. Or, Mr. President, I would move that we approve Resolution RC-22-18.
Second. Moved and second. All those in favor of the amended resolution, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That great summary. All right, moving on. Miscellaneous number 3. Council to consider 2019 encumbrances. Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, City Controller, and what you have before you is another version of an annual process, which is really it's akin to the appropriation process. Basically, what this is there is an ability in law for the city to encumber funds from the current year budget to carry the authority to spend them over to the following year. As a matter of administrative practice here, and I guess this has been the case since before I even came to work here, is that the rule around encumbering these funds, and I'll get to the specifics in a second, but the rule around encumbering them is that there has to be an identified purpose and vendor and an amount that is known, and the issue is simply the transaction can't get completed by the end of the year, but you're still planning to incur the cost, and you hadn't planned for that the following year, you planned for it in the current year, so you're just carrying forward that authority to be able to execute that transaction. And then what you see here before you is the list of the items which were requested for encumbrance, and it's really organized by fund. Initially, at the top, it identifies several encumbrances within the general fund by department, and we can go into some of the specifics on those if you would like. And then below that are encumbrances within other funds, and I'll clarify the naming there a bit. The first one is actually an encumbrance in the MVH fund, and it's for street improvement and rehab, but it's a contract that engineering is administering. The second one is a cumulative capital development fund, and again, that is an issue related to a potential vehicle purchase by engineering, and that's really, that action is a contingency. They may or may not do that, but they have already negotiated the price. And the last one for the Downtown Development Fund is actually for the street department, maintenance and administration, and it's related to some of the work they're doing in terms of maintenance for the color scheme reworking in the downtown square, and their belief is that some of that work won't get completed in time to be able to make the payment by December 31. So that's the issue with the encumbrances.
Miles.
And just for clarification, these are not additional appropriations. These are money that were already budgeted in this year's budget, and we're just encumbering them so that we can expend those funds in 2020.
That is absolutely correct.
Additional comments or questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I would move that we approve miscellaneous number 3, 2019 encumbrances.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Spalding. Moving on to transfers. Number 1, council to consider transfer TC-04-18, a cash transfer from the general fund to the promotional fund. Mr. Spalding.
Yes, and again, for council members, the president referenced this absolutely correctly. There are 2 types of transfers you can have, a cash transfer and an appropriation transfer. A cash transfer such as this is actually moving, getting the authority to move money from one fund to another. Appropriation transfer is just authority to spend that money. So this is actually a companion to the previous 2 ordinances related to the promotional fund, and this is the action that will enable the movement of $10,000 of cash from the general fund to the promotional fund to support those appropriations that are referenced in the earlier ordinance.
Questions of Mr. Spalding on transfer number 1?
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I'd move that we approve TC-04-18 interfund cash transfer resolution as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you very much. Transfer number 2, council to consider transfer TA-13-18, an appropriation transfer in the Parks Department to subsidize golf course operations. Mr. Spalding.
Yes, now this is an appropriation transfer, so this is actually no money moving between funds, but what is happening here is there were funds appropriated in the 2018 budget within the Parks and Recreation Fund to non-departmental, which we've referenced before as the contingency, and I'd established contingency appropriations within every fund. And so what this is doing is taking some of the appropriation authority that was approved in the budget as non-departmental, i.e. contingency, and moving it into the parks operating budget. And the purpose, the underlying purpose here, and it's referenced in the whereas clauses in the transfer, is the issue of support for the golf operations. So the way this will be executed is the city public golf courses actually operate out of a completely different fund, not Fund 108. They collect revenue in that fund, make expenses out of that fund, but the golf operations historically, typically, haven't been self-supporting with their own revenue, and as a result, there's been some, other city support provided to cover that gap. And so what this will do is it will appropriate the money within the Parks Department operating budget, and then the Parks Department will make a payment, in effect, we've talked about this before, a public purpose grant to another city fund to support the golf. And what this will do by handling it this way, it will have that expenditure show up as part of the park's annual operating expenditures, and then that will be something they can budget for in the future and plan for in that way. So that's the purpose of this. The amount is $250,000. However, the goal is to actually have that payment to golf be as little as possible, as small as possible. The Parks Department won't have that amount finalized till year end, but the payment won't just be $250,000. It will be whatever the amount is necessary to cover the gap, but we just don't know that exact amount, but we know it'll be less than $250,000, so that's why we're getting the approval for $250,000.
Mr. Spalding, do we have an idea what the approval for this item was last year?
What the amount was?
The amount, yeah.
The amount, boy, we had it listed, and I don't have it memorized, but it's been historically in the $250,000 a year range, I believe.
I believe, Mr. President, it was 220, 210, 220.
Yeah, we provided that information to the Finance Committee, I just don't have it memorized. I
So we're going the wrong
apologize.
direction here, huh?
Mr.
Taylor?
Back to the,
This appropriation to me is always got under my skin since I've been on this council. It seems like we talk about this every year, that we got to fund this, and it never gets any better. I would hope next year that the Finance Committee would put this as priority to see how we can correct this and get it going the other direction. It's always over 200,000, so obviously we're not doing something right. So we need to make some adjustments somewhere.
Mr. Boyce?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the budget this year, we did finance it at a loss, correct?
Only in the fact that there was contingency money budgeted in the Parks Fund, and I'm pulling from that contingency.
No, I mean this coming year.
Oh, in the 2019
In the
budget?
2019 budget, didn't we put extra money to fund for this?
No, there's still money in the contingency because we're still getting our feet under us on this whole thing, but we will get this sorted out. So it will actually be part of the Parks Department operating budget. And maybe what we'll do earlier in the year rather than at the end of the year, we may make that a budget adjustment in 2019.
I'll just say, briefly, I think what Mr. Taylor and what Mr. Boyce are alluding to is that we know that golf is an amenity that we can provide to our community. But I do think I will not speak for everyone, but by the nods, I would say that we all would love to see some strides be made to reduce that in the future. And I think Ms. Wiles said it well last year, I think in this exact seat, those comments. So it is disheartening to see it come back up again. So, Mr. O'Connor?
I guess further to the point, we have talked to our Parks Director, Mr. Bennett, who's more than willing to meet with us to have some conversation about different strategies, certainly with the administration involved, to try to find ways to try to minimize, mitigate. I don't know that we'll totally eliminate because it is an amenity, but work towards trying to reduce that shortfall. And there are some different things that I think we could do, but I think it'll take a group effort to try to identify some different strategies. So we will take that on, and fairly early in the year is our timing, our hope to get this moving. So your message is not falling on deaf ears.
Mr. Ayer?
I know in the past, this seems to have come up every year, at least for the last 14, 15 years. In the past, Mr. Bennett and Mr. Deacon have said, we've had retreats with discussion on this, and I know they've put together different websites, different scenarios, marketing plans, and several different things. I don't know what other options are out there to increase. I don't know that, I'm not a golfer, so I don't know if we're too high or too low. Mr. O'Connor can probably tell us that. But, it has been a lost revenue for as long as I can remember. And it's just trying to tighten that gap up a little bit, because when you get to that $250,000 mark, it's a lot.
I was just going to echo the comments of Mr. O'Connor and to share with all of you that the Parks Board is also concerned by this amount, and that they would like to begin to have those conversations to look at ways to reduce those costs, because it is concerning to them as well. So I think that there'll be several people who want to be a part of these conversations and ways to look to reduce that ongoing subsidy.
Additional comments?
Mr. President.
Mr. O'Connor.
I will make a motion to approve TA-13-2018 appropriation transfer resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 9-0. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Spalding. With that, we'll move on to council comments.
I just would like to take a moment to pause and, for a moment of silence in memory of our late President George Bush.
How about we all stand for that? Thank you. You may be seated. Additional council comments? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Good evening. Thank you.